Okay, so I need to tell you about something that sounds like a joke, but I promise you it's completely real. China just put a tax on condoms, 13%, starting January 1st, 2026. I'm not making this up. And here's the wild part. This is actually a policy signal. The government is literally saying, have more babies. Now you might be thinking, that's ridiculous. Who's going to have a baby just because condoms got expensive? And you know what? Chinese people are saying the exact same thing. Social media absolutely roasted this decision. One person wrote, "You think condoms are the problem? We can't even afford to raise a kid." Brutal, right? But here's the thing. This isn't just about condoms. This is about something much, much bigger happening in China. China is facing a demographic crisis that could reshape the entire world economy. And they're getting desperate. So today I want to walk you through how we got here. How did the world's most populous country start shrinking? And why is the government now doing everything, literally everything, to make people have babies again? Let me hit you with some numbers first because this is where it gets really scary. Stay with me here. In 2024, only 9.5 million babies were born in China. Yeah, that sounds like a lot, right? It's actually catastrophic. Just 5 years earlier, in 2019, it was 14.7 million. That's a one-third drop in just 5 years. One-third. China's fertility rate has dropped to around 1.0 births per woman. You know what you need to maintain population? 2.1. So they're not even close. They're at half of what they need. And it's been getting worse every single year. Here's another crazy stat. China's population has been shrinking for 3 straight years now. Since 2022, it's been declining. India already passed them in 2023 to become the world's most populous country. China lost that title. Gone. And according to UN predictions, China could drop from 1.4 billion people today to just 633 million by 2100. That's losing more than half their population. Can you imagine what that does to an economy? To a society? Fewer workers, fewer taxpayers, massive pension obligations, an aging population that needs care. It's a ticking time bomb. Right now, over 15% of China's population is 65 or older. That officially makes them an aged society by UN standards. And here's the kicker. China got old before it got rich. That's the nightmare scenario for any developing country. So how did we get here? To understand that, we need to go back in time, way back to 1979. You've probably heard of China's one-child policy, right? One of the most radical social experiments in human history. The government was terrified of overpopulation, too many mouths to feed, so they said, one child per family, period. And this wasn't just a suggestion. This was enforced with massive fines, job losses, and in some cases, forced abortions. Let that sink in for a second. The government was controlling how many children families could have. For 35 years, and it worked in terms of slowing population growth. But the side effects? Devastating. Generational trauma, gender imbalance. Because of the cultural preference for boys, millions of girls were aborted, abandoned, or never registered. Just gone. It created a whole generation used to small families. Having one child became the norm, the expectation, the default. Then in 2015, the government realized, oh no, we went too far. So they allowed 2 children. Too little, too late. In 2021, they raised it to 3 children. And now, they're basically begging people to have babies. Any amount, please. But here's the irony that just kills me. The same government that forced abortions is now taxing condoms. Think about that. Chinese social media captured it perfectly. One person wrote, "First forced abortions, now pressured into pregnancy." The whiplash is unreal. Now I want to zoom out for a second, because China isn't the first country to try pushing people to have more babies. Throughout history, governments have tried two approaches: carrots, meaning incentives, or sticks, meaning punishments. Let's look at both. Let's start with the sticks, because honestly, the history here is dark. Really dark. You ready for this? The Soviet Union had something called a childlessness tax. If you didn't have kids, you paid extra income tax, around 6%. The government basically said, your body belongs to the state. Reproduce for the motherland. Creepy, right? But it gets worse. Romania under Ceausescu, 1966, Decree 770. This one haunts me. They basically banned abortion and contraception almost entirely. And it worked, at first. Birth rates shot up immediately, but the human cost? Absolutely horrifying. Thousands of women died. Women were subjected to mandatory gynecological exams at work. The state was literally monitoring their bodies. Monthly pregnancy checks, orphanages overflowed with abandoned children. Many of those kids suffered severe neglect. The trauma lasted for generations. Still does. The lesson from Romania? You can force birth rates up short term, but the social damage? It echoes for decades, maybe forever. Okay, so sticks don't work well. What about carrots? What about just paying people to have babies? Spoiler, it's complicated. Japan has been throwing money at this problem for years. Subsidies, childcare support, parental leave. Their fertility rate? Still around 1.2. South Korea spent $64.8 billion in 2025 alone on pro-birth policies. $64 billion. Their birth rate? Still the world's lowest. Singapore tried it too. Cash bonuses, tax breaks, housing priority. Same result. The money helps, but it doesn't change people's minds. Why? Because the real barriers aren't about money. Well, not just money, it's housing. Education costs, career pressures, gender inequality. You can't just write a check and expect people to completely restructure their lives. Parenthood is a 20-year commitment, minimum. So what is China actually doing? Besides the condom tax, I mean. Turns out they're rolling out a massive policy package. In 2026, Beijing is looking at spending around 180 billion won, and that's about $25 billion, just on birth incentives. They introduced China's first ever national childcare subsidy, 3,600 yuan per year for each child under 3. That's about $500. Sounds nice, right? Except the average cost of raising a kid in China is about 27,000 yuan per year. The subsidy covers maybe 13%. They also promise that women will have no out-of-pocket expenses during pregnancy in 2026. All medical costs covered, even IVF. That's actually huge. IVF is expensive everywhere. Making it free could help couples who want kids but struggle with fertility. They're also rolling out free preschool education starting in 2025. Universal, nationwide. That's a significant cost off parents' shoulders. Local governments are experimenting with even more. Some cities offer cash bonuses for each child, extended parental leave, housing subsidies. One city called Tianmen has become a model. They surveyed mothers, did home visits, held 800 community meetings to understand what families need. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Alongside the carrots, there are definitely some sticks emerging, and they're aimed at women. Some local officials have been cold calling married women to ask about their menstrual cycles. When they plan to have kids, invasive much? In one county in Yunnan province, women were reportedly required to report the date of their last period to local authorities. The local health bureau said it was to identify pregnant and expectant mothers. But to many women, it felt like surveillance. There's also a push for love education courses at universities, teaching students to think positively about marriage and having children early. State media has featured stories of students having babies while still in school, framing it as positive, admirable, a contribution to the nation. And matchmaking services? Now tax-exempt. The government literally incentivizing people to get married. It's wild how explicit this all is. So how are Chinese people actually reacting to all this? Let me tell you, the skepticism is real, and the criticism is sharp. Remember that condom tax? People online absolutely dragged it. You'd have to be a fool to think condoms are why we're not having kids. One woman said she would lead the way in abstinence as her form of rebellion. That's how absurd people find this policy. A 33-year-old woman told reporters, "It's a disciplinary tactic, a management of women's bodies and my sexual desire." Direct words. Young people in Beijing told AFP the truth plainly. The pressure on us has nothing to do with condoms. It's jobs, housing, life. One 19-year-old student put it simply, young people worry whether they can shoulder the responsibilities of being parents. Nail on the head. And here's the deeper issue. Trust. Many Chinese citizens don't trust the government when it comes to reproductive policies. Not after everything. When a former family planning official died recently, Chinese social media exploded with criticism of the one-child policy's brutal enforcement. The trauma is still raw. People haven't forgotten the forced abortions, the fines, the surveillance. Now the same system says, trust us, have babies. There was even a proposal called the No Child Tax, basically penalizing people for not having kids. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Marriage rates are plummeting too. 2024 had the lowest number of marriages ever recorded in China. 6.1 million, down 20% from 2023 alone. People aren't just not having babies, they're not even getting married. The whole foundation of family formation is crumbling, and fast. So what's actually stopping people? Let me break down the four walls that families in China are running into. Every single day. Wall number one, housing. China's real estate boom made owning a home incredibly expensive. And culturally, you need a home before marriage. Studies show housing mortgages significantly reduce fertility intentions. The debt burden alone makes people think twice about having kids. Want a home near good schools? Prepare to pay premium prices. It's called school district housing, and it's brutally expensive. Wall number two, jobs. Youth unemployment has been a serious problem. How do you start a family when you can't find stable work? And China's famous 996 work culture, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, leaves no time for dating, let alone raising children. Wall number three, gender inequality. The burden of childcare still falls primarily on women, and it hurts their careers badly. Companies reportedly avoid hiring women aged 25-35. The unspoken rule? Don't hire someone who might take maternity leave. Discrimination is rampant. Maternity leave costs companies up to 95,000 yuan per employee. Government subsidies don't come close to covering that. So, women pay the price. Wall number four, education pressure. China's education system is notoriously competitive. Raising a child means committing to that pressure cooker. Parents often say, I'd rather give one child everything than spread resources thin across two or three. Quality over quantity. A recent study found that raising a child in China now costs more than in the United States or Japan. More. Let that sink in. Now let's talk about something the government seems to be ignoring. The condom tax isn't just symbolically problematic. It's a public health risk. Experts warn that higher prices could mean reduced access to contraception, especially for low-income populations, especially for young people. That could lead to more unintended pregnancies, more abortions. China already has 9 to 10 million abortions per year. The real number might be higher. And STIs, sexually transmitted infections, have been rising in China. Syphilis cases hit 670,000 in 2024. Gonorrhea over 100,000. HIV around 1.4 million. I know. Making condoms more expensive doesn't encourage babies. It discourages safe sex. That's not pro-family policy. That's reckless public health policy. One researcher put it bluntly. The negative effects will be borne by women, particularly by disadvantaged women. Always the same pattern. So where does this all leave us? Here's my takeaway from this whole saga, and I want to know what you think too. You can't tax your way to love. You can't subsidize your way to babies because the decision to have a child is deeply personal. It's about whether people have hope for the future, whether they feel secure, whether they believe they can give a child a good life. One person on Chinese social media said it perfectly. What gives people confidence to have children has never been the price of a condom. It's their faith in the future. And right now, a lot of young Chinese people don't have that faith. Can you blame them? The government created this crisis with decades of population control. Now they're scrambling to undo it. But trust takes time to rebuild. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Governments can control a lot of things, but they can't control people's deepest life choices. Not with penalties, not with incentives, not by making condoms more expensive. People will make the choices that make sense for their lives. So here's my question for you after hearing all of this. If you were in their shoes, young in China, facing all these pressures, would you have a child? Could you trust a government that controlled reproduction for decades to now support you in raising one? I don't have easy answers. This is complicated. But that's what makes it worth talking about, worth understanding, worth paying attention to. Because what happens with China's population will shape the global economy for the next century. This isn't just their problem. It affects everyone. So now I want to hear from you. After hearing this story today, what do you think? Drop a comment. Let's talk about it. Today's story ends here, but the conversation, that's just beginning. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.